tardi.
Good afternoon. We're near the end of the theoretical event. We have tomorrow the cooperative conference tomorrow in the building of Universal Art. But we close today with a presentation by Michel Bielicki. Then we have Federico Lopez Silvestre, and then we will have a creator and university professor from Colombia, whom we will introduce in due course. And with her, we will be closing our session. Michel Bielicki is one of the founding artists of Kind, one of the spaces of reference in the international world of art and new technologies. He was also a very close friend and was close to the work of Peter Biber, who for 24 years led that center. Michael Bielicki were the first to be used in these exhibitions. He was also linked to the Dusseldorf Academy at a very important time where several artists studied. The classroom of boys was there. Immerdorf was at some point the director of the school. He closely worked with the Art and Design Institute that was sharing space with CTKM, and he also became a good friend of Peter Sloterdijk. Weber have written many articles for their works, and where I've had the chance of writing and publishing and writing about his art. We had an exhibition in the art of contemporary art by Michel Bielicki and Camilla Richter, who's his partner, and for many years they have worked together. The exhibition was stopped, and it was very successful. It had already been invited by the 11th Havana Biennial, and he had been invited to the first conference on art and technologies, which was called Open Square, paraphrasing and making a parody of work by Danny Redmer, and the curators were Danny Montes de Oca. And he gave a lecture in the new media chair at the University of Arts, and we were able to think about a project of arts and new technologies. The Garden of Air is another historic piece when it comes to ownership and intervention and dialogue of artists with video games. Actually, CTKM has one of the most important collections in the history of video games produced by artists in that institution. The first exhibitions of artificial intelligence were held, so it's been a precursor and a pioneer, and not only to work with technology for the sake of it, but with a humanistic approach. And it has become an observatory and a place of discussion. There were exhibitions of hackers, uninvited Snowden. We've never heard anything about Edward Snowden since he left the U.S. And several documents were declassified. And there was an exhibition, a global project, Exodus, where Kung Fan Meher was also involved. And the truth is that was the spirit of Michel. With Peter Weber, they created an observatory at international level with Bruno Latour. Several thinkers and philosophers who have organized historical exhibitions. And Weibel had the ability, and Michael always next to him, to promote a dialogue among the historic vanguards of art and the world that is about to come. You could find a robot. It was a place of pure experimentation where exhibitions had nothing to do and had nothing to do with the traditional exhibitions that we find in large museums of the world. That is why I thought it was important to have this presentation by Michel, who's originally from the Czech Republic. He's never renounced his origins, and he's constantly producing and creating. And he led the Institute of Art and Design in the times of Schroeder when he was and he led the digital post-narrative division. So I want you to listen. He made an 8-minute video, but he's more interested in the discussion that can come afterwards.
Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly pleased to be part of this conference. Thank you for having me. I will be shorter than usual. The density of this topic I'm going to talk about is enormous. To begin with, it's important to recognize that discussing this topic in a human-only context feels outdated and irrelevant. People have little to contribute here, as this is primarily a domain for machines. Humans should merely listen. Allowing people to express themselves on this matter is both romantic and outdated. We must acknowledge the limitations of our intellectual capacities. We are currently in the infancy compared to the potential of artificial intelligence. 30 years ago, in my habilitation thesis, I wrote, quotation, "In truth, I shouldn't be standing before you. Rather, I should be communicating with you via the data highway from a projection screen. Here, a synthetic digital version of myself should be speaking instead of a captured video." This was in 1994. Leonardo da Vinci, the artist engineer, tried to merge art and technology. The futurists realized that the very essence of a machine, its abilities, rhythm, and my right possibilities would invigorate and propel the visual arts forward. No one foresaw that Gutenberg's printing press would inaugurate a new era for humanity by facilitating the efficient dissemination of ideas, creating a divide between the literate and illiterate closely tied to power structures. Access to information gave the literati an immense advantage. A similar situation exists today. Those skilled in handling digital code experience a world far more complex than those who aren't. This involves not only the sheer volume of information, but also becoming part of a machine that integrates with us, offering an unprecedented way of receiving information. Philosopher Wilhelm Flusser posited that all revolutions are technological, impacting art just as a bronze, color, photography, cinema, and computer technology did. What differs now is that earlier innovations were seen as tools for creating artifacts, tools that remained separate from us. Computer changed this dynamic significantly. We become part of the tool or machine, elevating our role within this system. Information technology no longer produces material objects, but rather loud immaterials. This calls into question the traditional notion of art, as it appears to us to be permanent only in material form. From 1994, the world became interconnected. The knowledge society emerged. Part of our brain started to operate outside of our bodies. Since 30 years, the amount of collective information grew in an exponential manner. The acceleration of the computer processing power is breathtaking. We humans will never be again the same. We become the nodes of a very large network through whose threads, be they material or energetic, information flows. In this context, reifying terms such as a soul, spirit, identity, I, or self need to be reconsidered. I have asked today my human lovely wife, Camilla, to ask the AI, artificial intelligence machine, called ChatGPT, how will look our reality in 25 years from now in connection with AI? Answer, the AI answered, I quoted only the last paragraph, by 2050, humanity's state will likely be shaped by the balance between the benefits of AI and the social, ethical, and philosophical questions it raises. While AI could lead to a prosperous, more connected, and healthier world, the future will depend heavily in society's ability to wisely govern AI advancements, ensuring they align with human values and well-being. The choices made in the coming decades will profoundly shape how AI serves humanity and how we adapt to the world it helps create. Philosophical questions about what it means to be human, the boundaries of individuality, and the nature of consciousness may become central topic. End of quotation. My conclusion. By 2024, we have reached an irreversible situation where artificial intelligence increasingly governs our lives and surpasses humans in numerous areas. It's beginning to develop its own artistic originality across various fields, heralding and burgeoning dynamic. The age of Homo sapiens may be nearing its conclusion. At best, a new cyborg-like species could emerge. Traditional art loses its relevance as something new arises, something for which we lack a term. Should we fear this drastically changed world? The answer is both yes and no. It's akin to an alien invasion bringing potential salvation amidst ongoing wars and severe ecological crises. It is paradoxical to discuss a topic whose long-term impacts remain beyond our comprehension. We shall see, or maybe not. Thank you.
ponemos, ¿no? Ahora está ya. Bueno, si hay alguna pregunta.
Are there any questions to the speaker? Questions to the speaker? Paulina, then when we left the room earlier, they're thinking, but don't be shy. I wanted to ask you about what you have just said, which I think is interesting, and I remember. Are you listening the English interpretation? I recall a phrase by Commodore, which is a book of the 1970s that is very interesting, by a Russian mathematician, Universe, Life and Intellect, who said back then, the fear human beings feel for machines to become superior and becomes the fundamental issue of rationalism. So how do you place this thinking nowadays that has been called the post-human era? How do you see it from your work, from your line of thinking as an artist?
Well, first of all, I would like very much thank you for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be part of this conference. And I just realized today that I should have traveled to Cuba because we have today snow here, and it was white, and in Cuba, I guess you have a little bit warmer weather. But I'm still happy to be connected and to get to your comment or question. You know, already when you say, what do you think about it as an artist? I am in this moment, and it's going from week to week in farther direction, thinking if the artist, in the way how we understand the artist, has any relevance. Because I was just last week teaching. I'm living in Germany, but I go time to time to teach to an art university in Czech Republic, in Pilsen. It's not the capital, very advanced university. And I was shocked that all the young people are using for their creation with such a natural gesture artificial intelligence that they do an impression like they would do it since they are in the school since many years. But it's very recent. It's really from, you can say from month to month, things are changing. So already this aspect that we get new tools which can create creative, any creative artificial product is already such a revolutionary thing that we can really think about what is, do we have a role in this? Do we even as an artist, but not only as an artist, I was a little bit provocative and I said, even this conference we are now sitting, or as a human beings, should be maybe run by machines, and we should be only a listener, because it seems that there is a moment where the access to a complexity of information and proceeding the information could have much more relevant answers to all those questions than we as a humans can give. So this is such a revolutionary moment that of course it's scary, and it's very confusing. I just today was playing, I was seeing a program where you just, it's a video program where you say few keywords. For example, you put a video there of yourself and you say, and now change your body into a dog, and then your head explodes, and then 3 suns rise up, and then you disappear in earth. And all this you say, and within few seconds you have a new movie which shows all those events. So this is like, I have no words, nobody has words. It's a very confused moment and very exciting and also scary. So I would say we live and will live in a permanently radical laboratory of creation, but also of control, of a dominance of machine in a sense of solving complex problems, including artistic issues. So at least if I'm very modest or very optimistic, I could say the machines will be very fair artist partners of us. But I'm afraid, or not afraid, I am convinced that the machines will do more interesting art, but not only in visual art, but also movies, also literature, also any kind of creative expression. And we are very close to it, and some indications show us that it's already here. So we are helpless, but we are also curious, and maybe we should be in the future modest and play completely different role than an ego artist which has this vision that I will create something, because we will have a competition, and we have already the competition, machine competition.
Si no hay otra pregunta.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you. If there are no further questions, then I thank you, Michael, and I do hope that you are able to come back to Cuba soon.
I will.
El título de tu exposición en La Habana fue muy interesante, ¿no?
The title of your presentation in Havana was very interesting. So we stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bueno, ahora tenemos a... Gracias. Tenemos a Federico.
We now have to Federico. Federico is preparing a PowerPoint presentation of 2.5 hours. Federico Lopez Silvestre, who's very well known in Cuba. I won't waste any time reading his CV so we can get down to business. He's a professor of the School of History and Geography of Santiago de Compostela. I used to go and give lectures, but he has grown. He was one of the preferred students of the school. Here are all his disciples. He has a group of collaborators thanks to the master's degree course, where the University of Arts and the University in Yucatan, where a series of universities of Portugal, Mexico, UNAM here in Cuba. The School of Humanities was also involved, several museums, the Museum of Yucatan, and the in Porto, Brazil, a foundation, and the National Fine Arts Museum. It was hard work, network.
Más persistente, casi.
He's almost a Buddhist. Initially, the project was not approved, or there was a delay in the approval of the project. He was able to bear with the bureaucracy. He is a creator, an artist. Almost all those sitting in this side have filled in forms. Ortesia, who designed the program, and Abel, who worked a lot, and Abel lost a lot of weight working in that project. It's a privilege having you here. So we wanted to invite him with this very interesting program, Analogous States and Organic Processing for a Theory of Artificial Intelligence.
Gracias, Jorge.
Thank you, Jorge. And thanks to the organization, and of course to all the friends here that Jorge has already mentioned. We not only have the people from Yugunet on that area, but from Mexico we have Alvaro Villalobos. And I was seeing somebody, another familiar face over here. As Jorge has just said, I'm here for the Yugunet. Actually, the last workshop had to do with artificial intelligence, the cybernetic world, etc., 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 the cyber world. And Jorge said this is very interesting, so let's have a paper on this. I think I had already mentioned to Jorge that we are commissioning in Santiago de Compostela an exhibition called Digital Affections. We have a great number of young artists, mainly, obsessed with these issues that we must address. This also has to do with my personal obsessions. We have an exhibition that will be called Aberrant Devices. What is the starting point of what I want to talk about? Well, it's very simple. Most theoreticians today wonder about how creative is the machines of artificial intelligence. Most of them say there is no creativity in that. Our starting point, what we say, is that this is a problem of paradigm. There is a general theoretical problem, epistemological problem. When we use the words digitalization, that comes from digit, number, computation, that deals with numbers, and we use the concept of artificial intelligence. That is where everything starts, and the problem why people don't find creativity in the world of machines. It's not a problem of what is happening, it's a problem of how you approach this issue. Next slide, please. Next one. As I was saying, the issues we deal with have to do with the centennials, the new artists of the new generations. Last year we had this exhibition, A Trace of Fury and Algae, because ecological issues are very much in trend, and we discovered that artists do not work with sculptures and paintings. They introduce plants, they introduce nests made by birds. That is why I brought this piece of a group of Portuguese artists. And this year, next week, we are going to inaugurate this exhibition. We are preparing an exhibition where we bring in this other theme. What Rational shows is that artists are not following the old philosophy of art, paintings, etc., but in genetics. Creation is what the birds do when they build a nest. Creation is also what do you do with and from the machine. That is where we find the general approach that I would like to use. We state that all matter in action is machination. That is the hypothesis. Everything is a machine and machination. There is a prior future like Star Wars, but it's not about spatial spaces or devices. It is a pity that you can't see because I had this in movement. We use proteins as a fixed photo, but they are moving entities, and it's hallucinating to see them in motion. We see how they work, and what we find are micro machines. What we have seen in this dance with this protein with legs is a small machine of an infinite number of machines that compose a cell that is built and rebuilt all the time. In the same way, we have micro machines that populate us and populate everything we know and go even beyond the limits of what is organic and inorganic. We are also machines. This is a very young artist who works with all these topics and with this idea that we are machines, of course. One, when when we stop to exist, when there will be no human forms, there will still be machines, living forms. I'm talking about machines in terms of machination, the proteins I just showed you, and maybe, only maybe, these other type of entities that Marceli Antunes plays with in Spain. So the question is a question about the creativity of the machines and the machination and processing world. Why in theoretical debates about creativity people question the creativity of machines? Well, I was saying from our point of view, it has to do with the general approach. The fact that you talk about artificial intelligence and not artificial imagination. We would like to coin the term artificial imagination for the instead of artificial intelligence, which is very much cybernetic in the epistemological sense of the word. Of course, this has to do with monism concept. If we say that everything is machine, everything is a machination, it's because everything is part of the same thing, an active matter. The very, very long and old discussion between matter and it's this, and the physical is the same debate between digital and what is the paradigm we propose? The paradigm of sensational machines, which is empiric or sensationalist. Sensationalist. Of course, the need to make digital prevail over analog. Everything that is affected by something is what works always actively. It's the world's interface. If machines were not sensationalist machines, if they were effective machines, they wouldn't be useful to talk about what we are discussing here. Once we analyze binarism, we can start understanding that it's not only comes from idealism, the Churchill, the separation between the body and the spirit, but also from another place. This is a game based in this wonderful phrase. Any expanded body expects a supplement, a soul supplement. A soul supplement. What does this mean? Well, as we move in this monist paradigm, it means that you need an imagination supplement to think on how this matter is activated to relate with the drawing. To begin to understand the problem, we can have a simple statement. Water is also a machine. There is a very simple machination of water. Water has the life of a sensationalist machine that is highlighted in the reflect. Water reflects light and everything that has in front of it. Why? Why is this interesting, and what can we talk about the mechanic imagination of water? Because it has a reflect like the mirror. Secondly, we have the aberrant reflect that is the principle of somatic imagination. Today, we talk about mirror neurons that are located in very concrete places linked to the optical nerve, and they mirror what they see. And this is becoming increasingly clear. So as they mirror, they can it, it could happen what happens with water when they mirror, they sometimes get a distortion. So we enter the world of somatic imagination, the waves that move the water. But that same water, once it is crystallized, when it becomes ice, can reflect in a refracting manner a different world. It becomes an active machine. Here we have a passive machine, there we have an active machine. But in any case, they are machines. They are molecules that gather together reflect the world. That other moment, the crystallization and strange formation due to the photons received, is the beginning of speculative imagination. There is a popular knowledge from the word speculate that comes from mirrored from a speculative. We only have few letters. different letter. Speculation is associated with what is far away, while the other is the passive state. One is more passive, one is more active, but in any case, we are talking about affection. So we can understand there is a mechanical imagination of water that are all machines and mechanisms. We don't have to wait for the human being to find imagination. We don't have to wait for any culture to have a sort of art. What are the machinations of the human animal? We can recover the scheme we have just mentioned based on water, but it's Bersonian, and there is an infinite cycle that joins the passive moment, the iterative moment, and the most profound virtual and digital moment of what is speculative, which is the principle of any imagination. There is no imagination in the middle of nothing. The subjective idealism has always been a failure because there is no contact with the world. And in any case, here we have a buckle that has a very simple root, a very mechanical root that we have just shown in the case of water. Here there is a feedback book. If we don't take into consideration this feedback between analog, and digital, we don't know what is at stake, and we go back to the binnarism that we have inherited. Why is interesting from our point of view to think about the creativity of the machines, starting with the bodies of those machines and the sensations and affections of those bodies? Because those bodies, as we have been able to see with the small protein with legs that we showed, they are necessarily plural. And they are cross-cut by pluralities. When we have a closed digital code, everything is codified beforehand. When we are in a machine with many pieces, and with several interactive programs, everything is pluralized. The principle of creation has to do with that pluralism, and we would dare say with the conflict and disparity that this interior plurality generates. The mechanics of bodies, we have to think about bodies in development, evolving bodies. I like Simondon's example. It's the one you have in the screen. What had to happen in the fish machine or bird machine when in a few thousand years we went from a monocular vision with two eyes, seeing plain things on all sides, to a binocular vision with two eyes like ours, one next to the other, and we were able to see space and depth. What Simondon says is, do we really think that bodies in those processes have an easy job? This is quite a very interesting phenomena. When a body is expanded, that there must be an expansion of the soul. And that is what he said in summary. This means that we need coherence, not quantic coherence, though they may be quantic coherence. And from those disparities, unintended disparities, we have a principle of creation very similar to what we link to art and what is done in the world of art that takes into account these pluralities. As we are talking about bodies and machines, we simplifying because obviously I don't like this staging. I've already said that proteins are machines. To come now and talk about this, they are sensationalist machines. To say now that there is a small history of the machines designed by human beings that adds in emergent terms. Traditional cybernetic says that the linear mechanism, the mechanism of the Industrial Revolution, is the mechanism characterized by the iteration and memory, spectacular memory, the fact that all basic mechanisms are mechanisms of reaction, action and reaction. Nothing else is expected than that reaction. Well, there would be a first moment of this linear designs, then there was a stage of cyber revolution during the 40s, which is very much linked to the development of war techniques or warmongering techniques. Cybernetic discovers the possibility of designing mechanisms that do not have a reflective response. Cyber devices are those that are capable of returning the sensation they receive with a negative feedback. Something similar but different. That is the principle of cybernetic. It is very easily explained with the bomber that is programmed for each missile to be redirected according to the target. Suppose the target is a plane, a flying plane. Well, it can be redirected to follow the plane. So it has a very clear goal, and the end ultimate goal is to hit the target. And then we have another stage. We have the year 1998 for this stage, but there are other options. We have the artificial revolution, what we call today artificial intelligence. That would be the transit period from the linear and the cybernetic to the possibility of a artificial speculative imagination open to difference. I like very much this example from Georgia Nice, where the computer was the one who was showing all possible variables. Next, please. The question is why the theory of a somatic imagination and artificial imagination has not developed. And the answer is very easy. That cybernetic is based not on the bodies of the machines and its pluralities. If this cybernetic theory had been conceived by engineers, engineers that build machines, it would have been a totally different theory. But this theory was built by mathematicians and code experts that began to develop the numeric codes. And what happens is that in general, and cybernetic in Greek means good governance, good control. Cybernetic has as a goal to generate easily controllable machines that can be capable of controlling the rest. That is why we insist on this program that controls all the goals that machine sets forth. Well, despite all this, we have Pien's photo on the here. There has been some progress in this cybernetic theory, the concept of Simondon, and though they are starting to talk about open machines, they continue to maintain these three elements. They talk about open machines because Yuki says that they have their own goal. We have programs and devices that can design or develop their own goal, but though they develop their own goal, what is not mentioned in all these theories, because the hardware and the machines and the machinations with the pluralities are not considered. The only thing that is considered is the code language, is the contingency as something internal of a process of creating an answer. You ask a program to do something and the program answers. What happens with the information code is that noise is reduced. There is no noise at all. All contingencies are externalized, and the sensationalist platform is disregarded. There is only one causality, a monocausality. As I said, top down, there is always a goal that is given, and everything answers to that goal. There is no possibility of interior conflict, which is so much present in multi-causalities. Next, please. We were not able to load the video that we had shown in the same space a month ago, so I will have to summarize it very quickly. I don't know if you know Apple Spot that was launched a few months ago. It's a very fascinating spot. You see here all the possibility of doing art. Many of the artworks of humanity and a machine specialize in crashing metal, and once it opens again, what you see is what you are seeing in the screen. An iPhone phone. This spot created so much controversial. Well, was so much controversial that they had to withdraw it. That is the best thing that can happen to those doing promotions, because it circulates in the network. They withdraw, but you will always have it in the internet. This spot, though it is very good because it achieves its purpose, the idea of what can be done in terms of a creative imagination is a problem. This spot summarizes the cybernetic rationale of Western neocolonial thinking. We destroy everything, what history has taught us, and in turn we give you a concrete product. What product? That is the question. A universal hardware model with a universal software model. And that's all, with a closed code. Of course, in this potential artificial intelligence, where do you find the somatic imagination world that is, and that machines can also develop? I'll tell you. Well, it remains in Silicon Valley or wherever Apple's headquarters is. It remains there enclosed in those four walls and the engineers who produced it. Obviously, from 1968 onwards, there have been. Michael talked about Leonardo because at his time Leonardo was an engineer, and that is the approach we need. A philosophy of genetic operation is not only a philosophy of art, and it's necessary since artists are dealing with arts but also with plants, ecological issues, etc. What happens with these artists since 1968? Though there is not much theory or literature about this, they are working with this concept with the intuition that there is a somatic imagination that makes each machine different, particularly if you have designed them differently from the others and with different behaviors, and then we can start the discussion where does creativity start and where does creativity end. For me, the moment a drop of water falls into a calm water, creativity starts because somatic imagination starts and the machinery starts to work, becoming a more complex imagination but comes back to the reflect. This is a piece from 1989. It's a piece you can see in internet. It's very simple but very funny. It's a sort of bicycle with a number of sensors and cameras left in sometimes in a museum, sometimes in a street, and it began to dance with passers-by. The behavior of this machine was erratic in part because it had been programmed to do this, to play with the audience, but it doesn't answer always the same way because it's not reactive. We can say it's transiting from the cybernetic phase to the phase of artificial imagination. In any case, this places it in the world of the unforeseeable. In this game with passers-by, contingencies being accepted. There are other artists like Cohen, Harold Cohen, who has designed painting programs so that machines can paint and paint differently. And what he does, he introduces stochastic variables. They don't externalize the contingency. So we find things like the ones you see here. It's true that his first findings were like a parody, but his most recent results surprise us. We have books to program to create. Introducing a stochastic in a program is a fraud. This is very interesting. This is an engineer, Sao, of the mechanical engineering department at the Tokyo University. He is developing drones with different engines connected, interconnected, like if it were the spine. And it has many different cameras with different visions. Why is this drone system so interesting? He tried to design this to have drones that could go inside, go or be able to cross a jungle. The fascinating thing about having several cameras and several engines that have to agree among themselves. The fascinating thing is that each tour of the dragon, of South Dragon, is different from the previous tour. It's very difficult to know what will be the route once you are in the jungle. And why? Because it has plurality. Like the same way that somatic imagination can lead us to a mechanical imagination, an artificial imagination that will question artificial intelligence can guide us or lead us to this, though we don't have the Apple's devices and outputs. I would like to explain Pilar del Puerto's work. This is a piece we're going to have next week from a young Spanish artist. This the artwork is a mirror. People place themselves in front of the mirror, and the mirror gives a ticket. And in that ticket, the mirror tells you if you are happy, if you are going to be happy. It tells you how you feel. The spectator doesn't know how Pilar's piece is programmed. Pilar's piece is totally open to internet. What is happening in Google today? There is increasing biased information. So Pilar notes that most of the tickets for girls will say that they are sad because statistically, according to what we find in internet, girls are sadder than boys. So this will be biased information. I bring this piece to talk about the article of Soma Leong, a mathematician who has published an article in Nature that is called The Model of Collapse. Sumalyov and his team have shown that like as artificial intelligence and chats are loading so much information in the networks, they are contributing more data than the ones that human beings and human machines contribute. Human beings tend to load our information as we wish and as we want, but artificial intelligence loads information that is repeatedly and cloned from its own database because it has discovered that the AI business are afraid of copyrights. They reproduce data themselves and they try to extract new information from data that are part of their system to avoid copyright. Sumalyov and his team have made an estimate, and the result is the model of collapse. In 15 years' time, the network will become a number of repeated data as part of the system. For you to understand how AI works, that doesn't go to open metadata, the data of many people, but to this encyclopedia. How does it work? Well, it is based on the principle of maximum probability. If you ask AI what a tree is, and in its database it is said that most trees are pines, it will tell you that a tree is a pine. If most of the dogs are German shepherds, they will say that a dog is a German shepherd. So they repeat this cycle of throwing in information that will lead to a collapse due to solicitor systems. It seems that we are many that were making a lot of noise, and that's not true. Not at all. And as he is a mathematician, he can give us statistics, and Nature magazine has published his article and his research. And in the wake of this, what or theoretical artists, the modern model of accessing those open metadata, it's a model that generates pluralities that are unforeseeable. And that will lead us to the artificial imagination that should replace artificial intelligence from an ontological point of view. An example of this open work is the one done by this artist when the Alberes city generated a mechanism by which all citizens of Almere could be involved in a project to design or to make a design for the city. When there is a participation of plurality, then that is a creative moment. And with this, I conclude. Thank you.
Bueno, si hay alguna pregunta.
Bueno, gracias por vuestra paciencia.
Muy bien, muy bien. Agradecerte,
Federico, I want to thank you. What are you talking about? Cybernetics? No, it's not cybernetics, but art history. We now have the privilege of listening to him again, but I think this is a very serious research work, very systematic. I now have to introduce the video by Eulalia de Valdenegro. She was born in Popayán in 1978. She's a botanist and visual artist. She's a teacher and professor of the University of Columbia. She's also a professor in the University of Paris. She lives in Bogota, Colombia. She has studied visual art of the and did a Bachelor of Arts in Bilbao, Spain. A misanthropic principal. She has won awards in the Alejandro Ángel Escobar Award. In this year, she developed the living sculpture with flowers from the forest. She has taken part in several international conferences in Paris and shown her work in several museums all over the world, Tokyo, France. She's invited to this biennial, to the Shared Horizons exhibition. She has presented her botanical illustrations in different museums, and her research work can be found in several academic journals, and she has authored and co-edited Permeable Bodies, Art and Sciences, a collaboration between the University of Essex and the Research Center of Humboldt. Welcome, Eulalia. She was involved in this Biennial of Havana, but for other work engagements, she wasn't able to stay for this session. That is why she's joining us online. And with her, we will be closing this session.
Gracias por aceptar mi pequeña intervención en este panel de arte y ciencia. Voy a hablar de una parte de mi investigación.
I will talk a part of my research work.
Haré entonces.
Now, to give you a context, a geographic context where I did this research, and then I will explain how modern botanical sciences produces sensitive objects, botanical illustrations, and herbal examples. And when we analyze those procedures and those objects, I find key points of the power over the vegetable world. Swamps. If you look at the entire planet, the tropical area, you have no mountains, and mountains are between Colombia, Ecuador, and Venezuela. After the 3,000 meters above sea level, you find something that is odd, which is a macro-diverse ecosystem, and there are plants that only grow there.
La radiación es súper alta, la temperatura puede bajar a 0 y a menos 5, a menos 4 grados, puede llegar a subir a 25 grados, los suelos son volcánicos, son unas condiciones súper extrañas en el mundo. Y en ese ecosistema, en realidad es una gran esponja vegetal que absorbe todo el agua del Océano Pacífico y el Amazonas, y es la riqueza hídrica de Colombia. Vengo de Colombia, nos paramos, la mayoría paramos del mundo están ahí. Aquí voy a hacer una pequeña introducción de cómo es la botánica moderna, ¿sí? La botánica moderna en el siglo XVIII, alrededor de Linneo, se pregunta cómo vamos a clasificar el reino vegetal. Hay muchos científicos tratando de entender eso. Finalmente el sistema de Linneo es el que gana, y las ciencias modernas en general, todas establecieron unos sistemas de cuáles son las pruebas científicas de cada ciencia. En el caso de la ciencia botánica pasó algo bien particular, y es que esas pruebas científicas se asociaron con la representación y con el arte. Eso es muy raro, ninguna otra ciencia lo hizo. Entonces, la ciencia botánica, las papeles blancos, ¿sí? Esos ejemplares son la prueba, que consiste en cortar la planta, desarraigarla, aplanarla, aplastarla y guardarla en una cartulina. Ese es el ejemplar. Esta obra que ustedes ven aquí es una apropiación de ese tipo de lenguaje. Ya más adelante explico. Después, ¿qué pasa? Los científicos escriben unos textos muy técnicos describiendo esta planta, la clasifican y hacen una publicación, y esa publicación suele tener una ilustración botánica, o aún hoy en día se hacen ilustraciones botánicas científicas. Yo nunca esperé llegar a tener tanto trabajo de ilustradora, pero he tenido 20 años misteriosamente. Y uno se pregunta por qué se hace ilustración botánica hoy en día. Y es porque realmente no se ilustra una planta, se ilustra una especie. ¿Sí? Una especie no existe, es un ideal, es como el David de Miguel Ángel, no existe un ser tan bello. ¿Sí? Es ideal, tiene todo perfecto. Eso es una ilustración botánica, es la representación idealizada de una planta que nos permite identificar una especie botánica. ¿Sí? Entonces, esta obra es una apropiación crítica, ya voy a explicar por qué, de los ejemplares del herbario, y esta es una apropiación crítica de las ilustraciones botánicas. Producir tanto un ejemplar
produce a herbal example and a botanical illustration. Botanical science bases all its knowledge in the sense of sight. All sciences have changed the way in which they see what they are studying. However, in botany, we still use our eyes, and there is now a transition to other forms of knowledge. But what has happened in the last 300 years, it has been based in observation and sight. That means you detach from the object you're studying, and there is a subject-object relationship. That relationship with the object is similar in most natural sciences that in the last few centuries have given us that nature is a mechanized object that we can rule and dominate. This type of relationship that capitalism has taken over and imperialism has also taken over, and is one of the causes of the environmental crisis we are facing. Going back to the beginning of modern botanical science, we could, in addition to this visual relation, we can see the names given to plants. Particularly in the beginning, the names of plants had a lot to do more with scientific bureaucracy than with attributes or features of the plants or their surroundings or habitats. Most names most plants were named after the scientists that identify the plant, political recognition, tribute to other individuals, and others made reference to site, habitats, pollinizers, etc. That has changed, and the relevance over the human who has seen classified that plant then compared with the plant itself. For example, we have the name of this plant that I'm showing here, which is a gender that is broad, that includes several species, all named after the viceroy of the time in the area. That is something that is common in several other species, and the name of the plant has nothing to do with the person. Grandiflora makes reference to an attribute or feature of the plant. That idea of discovery that is emphasized in the history of the discovery and also in the world of science. When scientific news, you hear a new plant has been discovered, and what has happened is that it has been identified and classified, which is not discovery. However, discovery continues to be the term used in when speaking about the news. Another important element is that herbal examples entail cutting the plants, drying them, and placing them all in one same format. This has the role of storing and creating herbariums and these large collections, but I question this because it leaves aside different forms of because today there is not one single definition of what plant is. There's different meanings. Most plants make photosynthesis, but not all. Most plants have roots, but not all. Most plants have flowers, but not all. Most have sexual reproduction, but not all. So all attempts, contemporary and current attempts to try and define a plant cannot be summed up in one single definition, and I found that fascinating as it is such a broad realm and so diverse with so many variations on which our life depends. I find it very odd that we want to identify and classify and store in a 50 by 35 format. For example, a cactus, which is round, that is large, and the leaves have been transformed into thorns. To squeeze it and put it in a shelf is a huge problem. The leaf of a palm tree that could measure 3-4 meters, put it in that same format proposed by botany is a problem. The large roots of some plants and algae cannot be stored using that format. That format that was invented in the 18th century and had some practical use, but does not really allow for us to learn more about plants. And that was typical of power colonialism, because we're forcing a huge realm to be reduced to a format that pays little service. The fact that we have to cut and dismember plants in order to have scientific evidence of those plants is something highly questionable, and because plants cannot move around, they stay there and create a strong network of symbiotic relations. And the fact that our first gesture for us to study them is to cut, and them is a colonizing act, and we dismember and separate this part of the plant from it. All epistemic systems of colonialism entail separation, division, uproot them, remove them from their identity, remove their history, and equalize them and divide them into races. And that is a fictional of colonialism, of defining populations per skin color. And the same thing happens with plants, with such a large diversity of plants that we are yet to fully know, because science is mostly concerned with the use of plants, and that is another colonial feature over local power. And this format and this way of getting to know plants roots them, and they are living beings, and I think that is a very serious mistake of botany. In these processes of creating knowledge, naming, discovering, drying, uprooting, all those processes are a way of transforming plants into objects. It makes us think that plants are objects that can be manipulated, exchanged, and prevents us to understand that they are living beings. Although we always say that we know that plants are living beings, the relationship we establish with plants is ultimately objectifying plants, and that is part of the environmental crisis our planet is facing. those procedures, methods, languages of colonialism over the plant world, and perhaps I'm unable to explain everything, but it is a way of exercising the power of the hegemonic scientific subject over the object plant, and I question and I now integrate my body into the vegetable body. I use the same procedures to my body, and I do it in a rather equitable manner, and in a performance I try to use those methods and languages, so from science to criticize them, not but use them in a different manner. The works that are found here are a comparison. This is in the Wilfredo Lam Contemporary Art Center. In the second floor there is an exhibition of my work, and this talks about the times we are living in as a human species and the loss of biodiversity. I invite you all to see my exhibition, and I thank you all.
¿Alguna pregunta?
Are there any questions to the speaker? Oh, there she is. Thank you for your presentation. One of the things we were discussing here, we invited Chus Martinez when back in 2012, and she was talking about this new subjectivity to understand that the first colonial gesture was colonizing nature, and those were the assumptions used by Karen Crystal and her, who was the co-curator. First Carl said, we want to do a biennial for dogs, and then said, imagine what would happen if strawberries could vote, if nature could have a say. This is something, and in my presentation I said that with biennials, I said it in my presentation, and I was talking to you that Goethe himself, when he made his essay about nature, the botanical world was very important, and from metaphor and literature he faced what you were saying, namings, nomenclature and taxonomy, and that's when he started developing his idea of experience, what experience was. Experience is half the experience, and it has to do with the difference existing between action and art. Science cannot solve that difference, and I think that one of the things that has come up frequently in our event is how theories and thinking not only emerge of the way in which we instrument or implement a methodology, but the process actions themselves, and that's what you were saying, and that's I wanted to ask you, in your view, how could we understand in the world we currently living the concept of multi-species, and that we human beings are no longer at the center? What place do you think the vegetable world will occupy in today's world, and when it comes to finding new paths and new futures for the world we're living. Jorge, thank you very much for the invitation, for your question. All these lectures were wonderful. I have not been able to join them all, but those I've been able to listen to, I'm glad to hear we are in line. I want to share with you how I got here to this phase of is a reflection by Manuel Koja, which is very simple. How is it possible that we all life, all living beings of this planet, all our lives to what plants do with their metabolism is photosynthesis, that they create the atmosphere and we are able to breathe, and all other lives spring from uh, um, plants. And of course there's some symbiosis, but I won't go into any scientific detail. But how come we owe our life to plants but we know them so little? You talk a lot more about artificial intelligence, but we don't talk about plant intelligence, and we owe them our own life. How is it possible that these things, because plants are seen rather as objects than as living beings, and based on my experience, I work with plants, but I do think there's a considerable spiritual strength in plants, and you can reach that through knowledge, through drawing. I observe plants for hours to make my illustrations, conscientious drawing with my own eyes, not with instruments. Perhaps has allowed me to develop a very strong link and spiritual tie with plants. And I think this is crucial for what I hope we're doing, which is a paradigm shift in which we human beings are not the center. I think it's the law of life. Symbiosis is the law of life. Symbiotic relations. We need to watch plants more closely and see how their forms respond to symbiotic relations and the static uh, 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 inherent to that process and other relations that plants have with animals or the forces of nature like water and sun is all done with an aesthetic form, with um, biomimicry was also discussed in one of the presentations, and I hope that that paradigm shift integrates more this relationship, spiritual relation with plants. And I wonder that many times when I work with plants, they ask me, you work with medicinal plants? No, no, no. I work with plants to study them and to relate with them spiritually, aesthetically, and ethically with them, without expecting for them to doing anything in return, without getting any benefit from them. That is a totally different thing. But trying to establish a stronger or closer relation with these living beings to whom we owe our life, I think is crucial in this transition I wish we are making. I don't know whether I answered your question.
This epistemicide we're talking about, I think nature, it's very important, how to use these terms that must be rethought. If there are no further questions, so we thank you for your participation. I think it has been very important. We started with the South economy and we end with you in a more direct approach to nature and species. I think that was the point we needed to establish a balance. Thank you, Jorge. And with this, we conclude. So I want to thank all those of you for having resisted throughout this week. Thank you very much.